Hey, it's Congressman Garret Graves. I hope y'all are having a good evening. I appreciate you joining us. We are doing a live telephone town hall meeting to talk about an update on the duplication of benefits issue that I know thousands of families in Louisiana have been affected by, and there's been a lot of, I guess, frustration in the implementation of the law. And so I just want to go through and give folks an update on what's going on and get any questions, comments, suggestions that y'all may have, just so we make sure that accurate information is out there. So just say it again. This is Congressman Garret Graves. We're doing a live telephone town hall meeting primarily to talk about duplication of benefits, which is an issue that is affecting thousands of families, in fact, several thousand families in South Louisiana. I'm going to give a quick background on the issue and give you an update on what's going on. First of all, on October 5th, the President of the United States, President Trump, signed into law a bill that is known as the Disaster Reform and Recovery Act. Section 1210 of that bill does include legislation that Congressman Cedric Richmond and I had initially introduced as a standalone bill. It then was included within a few other bills and ultimately became law as part of HR 302 again on October 5th. What it does is it provides for a process where the governor of a state, and this doesn't just apply to Louisiana, we tried to fix it long term, the governor of a state can apply for a waiver from duplication of benefits, duplication of benefits. If you were a flood victim, if you were a disaster victim, in the immediate aftermath of the disaster, the primary funds that were available were a smaller grant program through FEMA and a loan program through the Small Business Administration. That even though it says small business, that affects homeowners as well. So meaning homeowners, renters are eligible to apply for these loans as well. In many cases, these loans were the only funds that were available to people or the only money that was available to people for them to recover, rebuild, and try and get their life restored after the 2016 floods that we had. So fast forward a few months after the flood, we were able to get grant funding. It's a program through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's called Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds. We ended up getting, over a few months, we got $1.7 billion. That is the sole source of funding for the Restore Louisiana program. So just to be clear, Restore Louisiana, the grant program, is funded only by federal funds. There's no state, there's no local, no private funds. It's only federal funds that are funding that Restore Louisiana program. So under the federal rules, they were saying that if you got a loan, and let's just make up numbers. Let's say that you had a house and you got $80,000 worth of damage in your house, and you applied for a loan to the SBA, and they gave you $50,000. So then months later, you apply through the Restore program, and they say, well, we're either going to tell you can't get anything. Restore says you get zero, or you get a $50,000 deduction from the grant you would otherwise get. So you may get zero, you may get $5,000, you may get $10,000, but you might have been able to get $55,000 or $60,000 in a grant had you not applied for this loan. So we ended up changing the law that allows for people who got a loan to also get a grant. And so the intent was that we felt that this federal policy saying that a loan and a grant were duplicative of one another was quite frankly just didn't make sense. And so we changed the law. The governor, I sent him a text message literally as I walked out of the White House on October 5th, and I said, all right, the president just signed the law. The governor sent his letter to the president that day asking for a waiver that would allow the state to pay you a grant. And under the law, the White House, the agencies have 45 days after the governor's request is made to actually act on the governor's waiver request. I believe the governor's waiver request is within the bounds of the law. Our entire congressional delegation, House, Senate, Republican, Democrats, sent a letter to the White House saying we want you to, the same day as the governor sent his request, our letter said we want you to approve this waiver request. This affects several thousand families in Louisiana. I have had, and I'm going to guess now, probably 15 different phone calls, conference calls, and meetings with different federal officials from FEMA, from HUD, from SBA, and from White House offices during that probably the past month and a half, 2 months, probably close to 2 months. And so we have been talking to them, trying to get them to approve this waiver. We believe that they are outside the bounds of the law because the law only gave them 45 days. Here's what's going on. They brought all these agencies in, from attorneys from Small Business Administration, from FEMA, from HUD, and from the Office of Management and Budget. The different attorneys at these agencies are coming up with different interpretations of the law, so they can't decide how to act. If a waiver is truly needed, some believe that a waiver is not needed, some believe that a waiver is needed. All of them, the good news is that all of them agree that this duplication of benefits issue has been fixed. They agree that they don't need to go through a formal rulemaking process, which takes several months, a year, maybe even going through a formal rulemaking process. They all agree that none of that is needed. However, they have not been able to come to a conclusion over what process they should be following. Because the governor sent the request the day it was signed into law, which was legal, and I'd encouraged him to do that. And they just hadn't been able to come up with a policy fast enough. That's not okay with me. I'm frustrated by it. I have yelled at senior officials on the phone, face-to-face. We have a meeting this week with all of the agencies, including White House offices, in the House of Representatives. And we have other members of Congress coming because I've recruited other members of Congress from other states to come to the meeting to make it clear that this isn't just a Louisiana issue. This is affecting people in Florida and North Carolina, Texas, and other places. I want to show them that there's broad support and frustration by their delays and their action. So in summary or in closing, I'll just say that one, good news is that they all agree that this issue has been fixed. Bad news is that they have not been able to come to consensus on whether they need to sign the governor's waiver request, sign and approve it, whether a waiver is not needed and they can just issue some kind of informal guidance to the state. So this is where we are right now. We're waiting on them to figure out what it is they need to do. And again, I've got a meeting with all of them this week to try to force them to some type of conclusion to ultimately solve this problem, give the state some direction so they can release, as I understand so the state can release $250 million in federal funds that have been sitting in the bank for well over a year, and in some cases nearly 2 years, that candidly is your money. So I'm not letting up. I'm not stopping. I'm continuing to work with all these agencies and have the meeting this week that I'm hopeful we can get this issue resolved. So with that, I am going to turn to questions. If you came in late, I'm going to repeat that if you want to get a question in the queue, if I didn't answer something or if something wasn't clear, you can press *3 at any point in time. You'll be put into the queue to ask a question. It will not take you out of this phone call. It will not immediately make you live. It just puts you in the queue to ask a question. So I'm going to go and start with some of the questions that we have in the queue. And let's see.